You're the only person I trust with him. Ethan stood outside my apartment holding a dog leash in one hand and a spare key in the other, like neither of those things was supposed to make my heart start pounding. Murphy, his golden retriever, sat between us with his tail sweeping across the hallway carpet. I looked from the key to Ethan's face. You're asking me to watch your dog? For a week. He gave me that slightly tired smile he always wore after a long shift. My backup canceled 10 minutes ago, and I leave early tomorrow. This should have been normal. We lived across the hall from each other. I'd fed Murphy once when Ethan got stuck at work. We talked near the mailboxes. Sometimes he held the elevator for me. That was it. Normal neighbor stuff. The problem was Ethan Walker didn't look like someone my brain knew how to be normal about. He was 29, broad-shouldered, calm, and unfairly good-looking in a way that made basic things irritating. Carrying groceries, checking his mail, standing in front of me in a gray t-shirt with his hair still damp from a shower. I'd had a quiet, completely useless crush on him for almost 6 months. It meant nothing. He was straight. At least, I was pretty sure he was. I'd seen a blonde woman pick him up twice, and once I heard him mention an ex while talking on the phone. That was enough evidence for me. No. His brows pulled together. You can say no. No. I mean yes. I cleared my throat. Yes, I can watch him. Murphy stood immediately, like the decision had already been made without me. Ethan laughed under his breath. Traitor. Then he stepped closer and held out the key. Food's in the pantry. He eats at 7 in the morning and 6 at night. 2 walks a day. He'll act like he's starving after dinner. He's lying. Got it. I reached for the key. Our fingers touched. Just barely. Except neither of us moved right away. For 1 second, the hallway went strangely quiet. Ethan's eyes dropped to our hands, then lifted back to mine. My chest tightened. It was nothing. An awkward handoff. That was all. I pulled away first and closed my fingers around the key. Anything else? Ethan looked like he was about to say something, but Murphy leaned against my leg and nearly knocked me into the wall. Ethan caught my arm automatically. His hand stayed there, warm and firm, just above my elbow. You good? Yeah. My voice came out quieter than I wanted. He let go slowly. Sorry. You didn't do anything. Another pause. Too long for 2 neighbors standing under a flickering hallway light. Then Ethan glanced toward his apartment. I wrote everything down. Vet number, feeding schedule, emergency contact. You're very prepared. I worry. He scratched the back of his neck, suddenly looking less confident. He's never stayed with someone this long. I'll take care of him. Ethan's expression softened. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. I know. He looked at me for another second, and my stomach did something stupid. Honestly, I trust you more than anyone else in this building. Murphy wagged his tail like he approved. I forced a smile and told myself Ethan only meant the dog. The problem was, he was still looking at me like he meant something else. By Monday morning, Murphy had decided my apartment belonged to him. He followed me from the kitchen to my desk, dropped a tennis ball on my foot during a video call, and stared at me like I had personally betrayed him when I measured out the exact amount of breakfast Ethan had written down. Your dad warned me about this, I told him. Murphy wagged his tail and kept staring. I lasted 12 seconds before giving him one extra treat. Around noon, I took him back across the hall to grab his leash and a few toys. Ethan's apartment felt different without him there. Quieter. More personal somehow. I had only been inside once before, for maybe 5 minutes, but now I noticed everything. A chipped ceramic mug beside the sink. A stack of cookbooks with folded corners. An old guitar leaning against the wall. Family pictures held to the refrigerator with mismatched magnets. There was one of Ethan in a firefighter academy shirt, younger and grinning, with his arm around a blonde woman. My stomach tightened before I could stop it. Of course, the woman I had seen picking him up. Probably his girlfriend. Maybe his ex. Either way, none of my business. I turned away and found Murphy waiting beside the couch with a stuffed duck in his mouth. You are the only walker I am allowed to get attached to, I muttered. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Ethan, how is he doing? I sent a picture of Murphy sitting proudly with the duck. Ethan replied before I could lock my screen. He only brings that toy to people he really likes. Then another message appeared. Guess he has good taste. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim. It was a joke. Obviously. Ethan was friendly. Ethan was straight. Ethan probably sent messages like that to everyone. I typed 3 different replies before settling on. He also manipulated me into giving him an extra treat. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, came back. I knew I picked the right guy. My chest gave one hard, stupid beat. I put my phone face down on the counter and focused on filling Murphy's water bowl. That worked for maybe 30 seconds. Then Ethan called. His face appeared on the screen under harsh fluorescent lights. Dark uniform shirt, tired eyes, hair pushed back like he had been running his hands through it. "You look exhausted," I blurted. One corner of his mouth lifted. "Nice to see you too. I meant from training." "Sure you did." Murphy barked from beside me, and Ethan's expression softened immediately. I angled the phone down so he could see him. They had a full conversation that mostly involved Ethan asking questions and Murphy tilting his head. I should have ended the call after that. Instead, Ethan looked back at me. "Have you eaten?" I blinked. "What? Lunch? Did you eat?" "Not yet." His brows pulled together. "Noah, it is almost 2. I have been busy. There is food in my freezer. Take whatever you want. I am not stealing your food. You are watching my dog for free. You are allowed to eat a frozen lasagna." I laughed, and his eyes stayed on me for a second longer than they needed to. The smile faded from his face, but not in a bad way. More like he had forgotten what he was about to say. "What?" I asked. Ethan glanced down, then back at the camera. "Nothing." A pause settled between us. Quiet. Warm. Strange. Then he cleared his throat. "Call me tonight." I looked at Murphy. "To check on him?" Ethan held my gaze through the screen. "Yeah," he murmured. "Him too." That night, Ethan called at exactly 9. Not 9:15. Not whenever he happened to remember. 9. Murphy was asleep beside me on the couch, one paw resting on my leg, and I had spent the last 20 minutes pretending I was not checking the time. Ethan appeared on screen wearing a dark hoodie, stretched out against a hotel pillow. His hair was damp again. "There he is." I angled the phone toward Murphy. "He has been waiting for you." Ethan barely looked at him. His eyes stayed on me. "I was talking about you." My stomach tightened. He smiled like it was a joke, but neither of us laughed. The silence lasted just long enough to make my face warm. Then Murphy lifted his head and barked at the phone, breaking whatever had just happened. Ethan laughed and finally greeted him. After that, the calls became part of my day. Every evening, Ethan checked in. At least, that was what we called it. He would ask how Murphy ate. Then somehow we would end up talking for an hour. He told me the training center coffee tasted like burned plastic. I complained about a client who wanted 12 logo revisions, but could not explain what was wrong with the first 11. Ethan started sending pictures during the day. A sunrise over the parking lot. His ruined coffee. A vending machine dinner with the caption, "Living the Dream." None of it had anything to do with his dog. I started sending things back. Murphy asleep under my desk. The rain outside my window. A picture of the frozen lasagna after I finally gave in. Ethan replied, "Proud of you." I stared at those 3 words like they had hidden meaning. They did not. Probably. On Wednesday, I took Murphy downstairs and ran into Mrs. Delgado from apartment 3B. She looked at the dog, then at me, and smiled. "You and Ethan finally sharing custody?" I nearly dropped the leash. "I'm just watching him for the week." "The dog or Ethan?" She walked away laughing before I could answer. I told Ethan about it that night because it seemed funny. At least, I thought it would be. He was lying on his side, one hand tucked beneath his cheek. "What did you tell her?" "That you pay me $20 a day and provide dental." "Good deal. Very generous." His smile stayed for a second, then softened. "You would be good at it, though." "At what?" "Sharing a dog with someone." I stopped breathing normally. Ethan seemed to realize how that sounded, because his eyes shifted away. "I mean, you are good with Murphy, right?" "That is what I meant." Obviously. Another silence. This one felt different. Neither of us tried to fill it. Ethan looked back at me slowly. "It is weird not seeing you across the hall." I forced a laugh. "You mean Murphy?" "Yeah." His eyes held mine through the screen. "Him too." There it was again. Not enough to call a confession. Too much to ignore. I looked down at Murphy, pretending to adjust his collar even though he was asleep. "You are being strange tonight. Maybe I miss home. You have been gone 3 days. Still counts." Ethan watched me for another second. "Maybe I miss certain parts more than others." My chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. Before I could decide whether to ask what he meant, someone knocked on his hotel door. Ethan glanced toward it and exhaled. "I have to go." "Sure." He hesitated before ending the call. "Noah." "Yeah." His expression changed, quieter somehow. You look good tonight, by the way. Then the screen went dark, and for the first time, I could not convince myself he was only being friendly. By Thursday, my apartment had started looking like Murphy lived there full time. His water bowl was beside my kitchen island. His leash hung near the door. There was golden fur on my couch, my hoodie, and somehow inside a cabinet I had not opened all week. I should have been annoyed. Instead, I caught myself thinking about what it would feel like if Ethan walked in and saw all of it. Like we had built some temporary little routine without meaning to. That afternoon, I worked from Ethan's apartment because Murphy refused to settle anywhere else. I used the far end of the couch, answered emails, and tried not to notice how natural it felt being there. Around 6, I found ingredients for pasta in the kitchen and made too much by accident. At least, that was what I told myself, while putting half of it into a container and sliding it into Ethan's refrigerator. My phone buzzed. Ethan had sent a picture of another terrible vending machine dinner. "This is getting depressing," I typed. His reply came immediately. "You worried about me? I am worried you will forget what real food looks like." The typing bubble appeared. "So you are worried about me." I smiled before I could stop myself. "Do not make it weird." Too late. My chest tightened. Before I could answer, he started a video call. I accepted, and his face filled the screen. He looked tired, but his smile was real. "Show me what you made." "No, why?" "Because you will ask for some." I was already going to ask for some. I turned the camera toward the stove. Ethan made a low sound of approval. "You cooked in my kitchen?" Murphy supervised. "You look comfortable there." Something in his voice changed. Softer. More careful. I looked at him. "Is that a problem?" No, his eyes stayed on mine. "I think I like it." The room suddenly felt smaller. I set the phone against the backsplash and focused on putting the lid on the leftovers. "You like someone using your expensive olive oil?" "I like you there." My hand stopped. Ethan did not look away. Neither did I. For a second, I thought he might finally say it. Whatever this was. Whatever had been sitting between us since he handed me that key. Instead, Murphy jumped up and nudged my arm. The container slipped. I caught it, but Ethan laughed, and the moment broke just enough for both of us to breathe again. "He saved you," Ethan murmured. "From dropping dinner?" "Sure." I looked at him, but he was already glancing down. I told myself not to push. Then I noticed the picture on the refrigerator again. Ethan beside the blonde woman, both of them smiling with their arms around each other. The stupid hope in my chest faded fast. "Who was that?" I asked before I could stop myself. Ethan followed my gaze through the screen. "Who?" I held the phone toward the picture. "Her." He was quiet for half a second. "Too long." "Why?" "No reason." I tried to sound casual. "Your girlfriend?" Ethan looked back at me slowly. "Would that bother you?" The question hit so hard I forgot how to answer. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Ethan watched me in complete silence, his expression unreadable. Then someone called his name from outside the hotel room. He glanced toward the door. When he looked back, the moment was gone. "I have to go." "Right." "Noah." His voice stopped me before I could end the call. "We should talk when I get home." The screen went dark, and I stood alone in his kitchen, staring at the picture, knowing I had just been asked a question neither of us was ready to answer. Friday night, Ethan stopped answering his phone. At first, I told myself he was busy finishing training. Then 9 o'clock passed. Then 10. Murphy kept lifting his head every time footsteps moved through the hallway, and I hated how much I was doing the same thing. Around 10:30, someone knocked on Ethan's door. I was inside his apartment, half asleep on the couch with Murphy stretched across my chest. The sound made both of us jump. Before I could move, a key turned in the lock. Ethan stepped inside carrying a duffel bag, rain darkening his jacket and dripping from his hair. A tall guy in a fire department sweatshirt stood behind him holding another bag. "Told you he would be here," the guy said. Ethan froze when he saw me. Not Murphy. Me. His eyes moved over the blanket, the open laptop on the coffee table, the empty dinner plate beside me. For a second, he looked almost relieved. "You are back early." I sat up too fast, and Murphy nearly rolled onto the floor. Ethan dropped his bag and crossed the room. Murphy launched himself at him, tail hitting everything in reach, but Ethan kept looking past him at me. "Training ended this afternoon." His voice sounded tired. My phone died on the drive. The guy behind him glanced between us with a grin that made my stomach tighten. "So this is Noah." Ethan's shoulders stiffened. "Marcus." "What?" Marcus set the second bag near the door. "You mentioned him enough." Ethan gave him a warning look. I mentioned Murphy. Sure. Marcus nodded toward me. Nice to finally meet the emergency contact. I am not his emergency contact. The answer came out too quickly. Marcus laughed. Could have fooled me. Ethan rubbed a hand over his face. Do you not have somewhere else to be? Absolutely. Marcus backed into the hallway, still smiling. Enjoy being home. His eyes flicked to me again. Both of you. The door closed behind him, leaving the apartment painfully quiet. Ethan stared at the floor for a second. Sorry about him. He seems subtle. That got a tired laugh out of him. Murphy pushed between us, demanding attention, and Ethan knelt to hug him. I watched the tension leave his face as he buried one hand in the dog's fur. I missed you, buddy. Then he looked up at me. I missed this. I swallowed. Your apartment? Not exactly. Ethan stood. We were closer than I expected. Close enough to see the rain caught in his eyelashes. Close enough to notice the way his chest rose when he took a slow breath. You should change before you get sick, I murmured. Probably. He did not move. Neither did I. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. It was not a quick thank you hug. His hand settled flat against my back, warm even through my shirt, and his chin brushed my shoulder. My body went completely still before I finally let myself hold him back. For one quiet second, everything felt too easy, too familiar, like I had been waiting for him to come home. Ethan exhaled near my ear. Thank you for taking care of him. Of course. His grip tightened slightly. And for being here. When we pulled apart, his hands stayed at my sides. Our faces were only inches apart. His eyes dropped to my mouth, then lifted again. My heart started pounding. Ethan leaned in just enough to make me stop breathing. Then Murphy barked between us. We both jerked back. Ethan laughed, but it sounded nervous. He has terrible timing. Or perfect timing. I tried to smile. Ethan's expression changed. Something closed off behind his eyes. Maybe. The word landed harder than it should have. He stepped away, grabbed his bag, and looked toward the bedroom. You can go home if you want. I have him now. Just like that, the warmth disappeared. I nodded like it did not hurt. As I reached the door, Ethan spoke again. Noah. I turned. He looked like he wanted to stop me. Instead, his jaw tightened. Marcus talks too much. I forced a small laugh. Good to know. I walked across the hall wondering what Ethan had told his coworker about me, and why being noticed had made him pull away. The next morning, I found Ethan standing outside my door with 2 coffees and Murphy's leash wrapped around his wrist. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way he had leaned toward me, then pulled back like he had touched something dangerous. Ethan lifted one cup. Peace offering. I leaned against the doorframe. For what? For being weird. At least he admitted it. Murphy pushed his nose against my leg, and I stepped aside. Ethan walked in like he had done it 100 times, even though he never had. He set the coffees on my kitchen counter and stayed standing. No small talk. No easy smile. Just his fingers tightening around the leash. Marcus noticed, he muttered. Apparently. He notices everything. That is not why you pulled away. Ethan looked at me then. Really looked. His face was tired, guarded, but there was something underneath it I had not seen before. Fear, maybe. Not of me. Of himself. No, he admitted. It was not. The room went quiet. Murphy circled twice and dropped onto the rug like he had decided this conversation was taking too long. I folded my arms, mostly so Ethan would not see my hands shaking. Then why? He glanced toward the window. Because for a second last night, I forgot we were supposed to be neighbors. My chest tightened. What were we supposed to be instead? His jaw moved like he was biting back the first answer that came to him. Then he stepped closer. Not enough to touch me. Enough that I noticed. I do not know. That is helpful. I am trying, Noah. His voice dropped. I have spent the whole week calling you when I did not need to. Sending you pictures of nothing. Thinking about you sitting in my apartment like it was the most normal thing in the world. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. Then I came home, saw you there, and all I wanted was to hold you. I stopped breathing. Ethan gave a short, humorless laugh. That did not feel very straight. Neither of us moved. The coffee machine clicked behind me as it cooled, loud in the silence. Maybe you were tired, I managed. Maybe you missed Murphy. I did miss him. Ethan's eyes stayed on mine. But I was not looking at Murphy when I almost kissed you. The words hit harder than the almost kiss itself. My stomach dropped, then flipped. I looked down because holding his gaze felt impossible. You pulled away. Because Marcus was right outside. Because I did not know what I was doing. Because I have never wanted to kiss a man before. He paused. Not because I did not want to kiss you. I looked back up. Ethan was closer now. His hand rested on the counter beside mine. Not touching, but barely. What happens now? I whispered. I do not know. His fingers shifted, brushing the side of my hand. This time, he did not move away. I just know I do not want to go back to waving at you in the hallway and pretending this week meant nothing. My pulse thudded in my ears. It did not mean nothing to me. Good. His shoulders loosened, just a little. Because it felt real to me too. Murphy suddenly stood, grabbed the leash, and pushed it into Ethan's knee. Ethan laughed under his breath, but his hand stayed beside mine. He wants a walk. Probably. Come with us. The question sounded casual. His eyes did not. I wrapped my fingers around the coffee cup, trying to steady myself. Is this still neighbor stuff? Ethan held my gaze. No, he murmured. I do not think it is. For the next 2 days, Ethan barely looked at me. Not completely. He still nodded when we passed in the hallway. Still let Murphy pull toward my door during walks. But the call stopped. The coffee stopped. Everything that had felt different suddenly looked normal again, and somehow that was worse. I told myself he needed time. He had admitted things he had probably never said out loud before. Maybe giving him space was the decent thing to do. By Sunday afternoon, decent felt a lot like being avoided. I was coming back from the coffee shop with Caleb, an old friend from college who had been in town for the weekend. We were laughing about a professor we both hated when the elevator opened and Ethan stepped out with Murphy. He stopped when he saw us. His eyes moved from Caleb to the 2 coffee cups in my hand. Hey. His voice was flat. Hey. I shifted awkwardly. Ethan, this is Caleb. Caleb, my neighbor. The word neighbor landed strangely after everything that had happened. Caleb smiled and held out a hand. Nice to meet you. Noah has told me a lot about Murphy. Ethan shook it, but his attention stayed on me. Only Murphy? Caleb glanced between us. Mostly. He looked amused in a way I did not appreciate. I should get going. He bumped my shoulder lightly. Text me later. Ethan watched him walk down the hall. His jaw tightened. You two dating? The question came too fast. I stared at him. No, looked like it. Why do you care? Ethan looked down at Murphy's leash. For a second, I thought he might answer honestly. Instead, he shrugged. I do not. My chest went cold. Right. I moved toward my door. Murphy tried to follow me, but Ethan held the leash short. Noah. I stopped without turning. What? Silence. Then, quieter. I am trying not to make this worse. I faced him. By pretending nothing happened. His eyes flicked toward the stairwell, checking whether anyone was nearby. That tiny movement told me everything. I do not know what people are going to think. People like Marcus? People in general. Ethan exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. My crew. My family. Me. I hated how much that last word hurt. So you regret it. That is not what I said. You stopped calling. You will not even stand near me unless the hallway is empty. Because every time I do, I want to do something I am not ready to explain. His voice rose, then immediately dropped. That is the problem. No. The problem is you want me when nobody is looking. Ethan flinched. I had not meant to say it that sharply, but once it was out, I could not take it back. Murphy sat between us, looking from one face to the other. Ethan stepped closer, then stopped himself. I am scared. I know. That does not mean I am ashamed of you. It feels the same from this side. The hallway went quiet. Ethan's face changed, like the words had finally reached somewhere he could not ignore. I unlocked my door. I am not asking you to have every answer. I just cannot be the thing you hide while you figure it out. I stepped inside and started to close the door. Murphy whined softly. Ethan put one hand against the frame, not forcing it open, just stopping it for a second. I was jealous, he admitted. I looked at him. Of Caleb. His eyes held mine, scared and honest. And I hated it, because I knew I had no right to be. He let his hand fall. I am not pulling away because I do not want this, Noah. I am pulling away because I wanted enough to ruin everything. Then he walked back across the hall, leaving me with the worst possible truth. Ethan was not regretting what happened. He was terrified it mattered. The knock came a little after midnight. 3 slow taps. Not loud enough to wake the building. Just loud enough to tell me Ethan had been standing out there for a while. I opened the door and found him in a black hoodie, hands shoved into the front pocket, Murphy sitting beside him like backup. Can we talk? I stepped aside. Ethan entered, but he did not sit. Neither did I. For a few seconds, we just stood in my living room with the television muted and the kitchen lights spilling across the floor. Murphy circled once, then settled near the couch. Ethan looked at him instead of me. I keep trying to find a version of this that does not scare me. I folded my arms. Did you find one? No, his eyes lifted. But avoiding you is worse. That took some of the anger out of me. Not all of it. You cannot keep pulling me close and then acting like I imagined it. I know. Do you? My voice came out quieter than I expected, because I have spent the last week trying to figure out which Ethan is real. The one who called me every night, or the one who barely looks at me in the hallway. His jaw tightened. Both. I shook my head. That is not fair. I am not trying to be fair. He moved one step closer. I am trying not to lie to you. Then do not. Silence. Ethan looked down at his hands. He pulled one from his pocket, flexed his fingers, then let it fall at his side. I did not call because of Murphy. I know. I came home early because I wanted to see you. My chest tightened. Ethan. I was jealous of Caleb. He gave a small, embarrassed laugh. That part was obvious. I know. He finally held my gaze. And when I almost kissed you, I was not confused about whether I wanted to. The room went completely still. What were you confused about? His expression shifted. Less guarded. More tired. What it meant about me. I let out a slow breath. And what did you decide? That I do not have a clean answer. He stepped closer again. We were only a few feet apart now. I have spent 29 years assuming one thing about myself. Then you start sitting in my apartment, feeding my dog, leaving food in my refrigerator, and suddenly none of it feels as solid as I thought. His mouth tightened. That scares me. I am not asking you to choose a label tonight. I know. I am asking whether this is real when nobody else is watching. Ethan looked at me for a long time. Then he reached out slowly, giving me every chance to move. His fingers closed around my hand. Warm. Careful. He did not hide it behind a joke. He did not let go when Murphy shifted beside us. It is real, he murmured. My pulse jumped under his thumb. Then why are you here? Because I do not want to keep acting normal. His eyes dropped to our hands. Normal feels worse now. I squeezed his fingers once. What happens tomorrow? I do not know. He looked back at me. But I know what I want tonight. My breath caught. Ethan stepped closer until there was almost no space left between us. I want to stay. For a second, I thought Ethan meant he wanted to sleep on my couch. Something safe. Something we could explain in the morning. Then his hand tightened around mine, and I understood. Okay, I whispered. He did not kiss me right away. That mattered more than I expected. He just stood there, close enough that our shoulders touched, giving me time to change my mind. I did not. I lifted my free hand and caught the edge of his sleeve. Ethan looked down at it, then back at me. Can I? His voice was barely above a breath. I nodded. The kiss was slow and careful. Nothing dramatic. Just warm, nervous, and real enough to make every confusing moment from the past week finally settle into place. Ethan pulled back first, only an inch. His eyes searched mine. Was that okay? I laughed softly, mostly because my heart was beating too hard to do anything else. You can stop asking like you were waiting for a fire code violation. That finally made him smile. A real one. Occupational habit. I kissed him again before he could overthink it. This time, his hand moved to my shoulder, steady and gentle. Murphy let out a loud sigh from the couch, like we were inconveniencing him. We both laughed, and somehow that made the whole thing feel less terrifying. More like us. Ethan stayed that night, but not in some perfect movie way. We sat on the floor with our backs against the couch, sharing stale crackers because neither of us wanted to cook. Murphy stretched across both our legs. Ethan talked about his family. I told him about the first time I realized I liked him, when he carried an elderly neighbor's groceries up 3 flights because the elevator was broken. He looked embarrassed. That was your moment. You were wearing that ridiculous fire department shirt. It is a good shirt. It is aggressively fitted. He laughed and leaned his head against mine. Neither of us said boyfriend. Neither of us talked about forever. We just stayed there until the sky outside started getting lighter. The next morning, Ethan reached for my hand before we stepped into the hallway. I stopped. He looked at me, unsure. Too soon. I glanced toward the elevator, then at our joined hands. Are you going to let go if someone comes out? His thumb moved across my knuckles. No. Right then, Mrs. Delgado opened her door with a trash bag in one hand. Her eyes dropped to our hands. Then to Murphy. Then back to us. Ethan went still beside me. I waited for him to pull away. He did not. Mrs. Delgado smiled like she had won something. Sharing custody again? Ethan looked at me, nervous but smiling. Something like that. We walked Murphy around the block with our hands brushing between us until Ethan finally took mine again. This time, he did not check who was watching. A week later, he knocked on my door holding 2 coffees. Murphy sat beside him wearing a new blue collar. "You need a dog sitter again?" I asked. Ethan shook his head. "No, I was thinking breakfast. Maybe a walk after. Is this a date?" He looked embarrassed for half a second, then met my eyes. "Yeah, this time it is." I thought Ethan had trusted me with his dog for 1 week. It took me a while to realize he had been trusting me with something else, too. And when he finally reached for my hand without looking over his shoulder, I knew I could trust him back.